The initial injury report for the Oklahoma Sooners versus the Auburn Tigers has several important surprises on it.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. I'm John Williams of Sooners Wire and USA Today Sports. And on today's show, we're just going to go through Oklahoma's initial availability report, aka the injury report, ahead of their Week 4 matchup with the Oklahoma Sooners. What's concerning, who's going to play, and what surprises did we see on the initial availability report? Well, to me, it starts up front along the offensive line. I expected that Michael Fasusi would be on this report after missing last week against Temple, but I expect him to play. This is one of those guys that Oklahoma is going to rely on at left tackle. Now, he was listed as a co-starter alongside Luke Baklenko at left tackle. So if Fasusi is unable to go this weekend against Auburn, look for the veteran Luke Baklenko to get the start at left tackle. Also along the offensive line, Jake Michael is showing up. Febechi Wewu also showing up. It's interesting to me. Now, Michael got rolled up on a little bit in the late stages of that game against Temple. Febechi Wewu. It's going to be fascinating to see what goes on with these guys. They're veteran players along the interior of your offensive line, and you need these guys to play. Now, they're questionable. We'll see what their week looks like as we get closer to game day. We'll get availability reports on Thursday and Friday going into the game on Saturday. And I think if they're still listed as questionable, I would anticipate them playing. There's nothing that's been indicated from the team that they won't be available, but this is certainly concerning and something that we'll have to keep an eye on because your starting offensive line has already seen two significantly different units. And if these three guys, Fasusi, Michael, and Wewu, are unable to go, you're going to see your third significantly different offensive line starting combination. And like we talked about with Fasusi, if he's not able to go, Luke Baklenko at left tackle. If Jake Michael is not able to go at center, I don't know what they do. Do they go with Gunnar Allen? Do they go with Owen Hollenbeck? Do they have another option that they've been working on under the radar that we don't know about to play center for the Oklahoma Sooners? Febechi Wewu, it's a little bit more straightforward. If he's not able to go, you're likely going with a combination of Ryan Foje and Eddie Pierre-Louis at right guard. Even though Eddie Pierre-Louis has been playing mostly left guard this offseason to prepare and compete for an opportunity to start, if they got to play him at some right guard, that wouldn't surprise me either. So the offensive line, especially interior with Michael and Wewu, that's going to be probably the most important thing to monitor on the injury reports that come out from the SEC a little bit later this week. Also notable on here is that Marvin Jones Jr. was listed on the injury report. Now, he led Oklahoma Sooners defensive linemen in snaps against Temple, which was a little bit surprising considering they were able to get up so big in that game. And they took out guys like Jaden Jackson after 12 snaps, Kendall Daniels after 12 snaps, but played a veteran like Marvin Jones Jr., according to Pro Football Focus, quite a bit in that game. Did he get overextended? What's the deal there? Another important piece to watch because you're without R. Mason Thomas for the first half of this game, meaning you're down a significant veteran along your defensive line, at least at the edge position. If you don't have Marvin Jones Jr. available, you're also down another key player on your defense. Now, you've got a great interior that's going to help make up for the losses that you have at edge, but you're going to be deploying guys that don't have a ton of experience. Adepoju Adebaware, he's played some, but he hasn't played a lot. Taylor Wine, he's played a little bit, hasn't played a whole lot. And if Marvin Jones Jr. is not able to go, that's likely going to be your starting defensive end combination with a little bit of Danny Okoye mixed in, Wyatt Gilmore mixed in as well. So you need to have one of your veterans available, especially as Auburn tries to utilize the read option game, the misdirection game. You've got to have guys that are locked in and keyed into their responsibilities and aren't getting played out of their responsibilities. So hopefully Marvin Jones Jr. is good to go this Saturday against Auburn, because that's a key piece that you're going to need on your defense to help get a big win at home. Notable absence from the injury report, and this is good news, and that's Gentry Williams. Williams missed the game against Temple, battling a hamstring injury that he suffered in the Michigan game. It looks like he's going to be available, and that's huge for the Sooners defense against Auburn's really talented wide receiver group that has Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton, and Malcolm Simmons is going to be available for this one. He was listed as questionable on probable on Auburn's availability report. So they're going to have their full complement of wide receivers available for Jackson Arnold to throw to. You need to have your experienced playmaking cornerbacks available to try to go make some plays on some footballs and see if they can create some turnovers, get that first turnover of the season for the Sooners. Also really important to note, Keontez Lewis, he's listed as probable. Now, this is a guy that I've thought was unlikely to play for Oklahoma this week, given the severity of the concussion that we witnessed against Temple. He was down on the ground for a long time. And so I'm still going to be kind of surprised if he doesn't play, but that he's listed as probable on the initial availability report. Now, he can get downgraded to questionable or doubtful over the next couple of days, but the fact that he's listed as probable, that's encouraging. And I think that's an encouraging sign for Oklahoma's offense, that you're going to have potentially your full complement of starting wide receivers available to you, aside from Giovanni Gibson, but the guys who have been starting the first three games, Deion Burks, Isaiah Satania, and Keontez Lewis, all three being available, that's big for Oklahoma. So it looks like Oklahoma is getting some good positive news, even while maybe along the offensive line and with Marvin Jones Jr., you've got some questions, and you hope, fingers crossed, say some prayers that these guys are able to go on Saturday and play well for the Oklahoma Sooners, because they're going to have to for Oklahoma to get a win in this one. We'll touch on a few other injury reports or injury notes here. Again, several surprises on this list that we haven't even touched on yet. We'll do that coming up here on Locked On Sooners. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For Oklahoma, it's Tory Blaylock. He delivered in a big way with a 14-carry, 100-yard, 2-touchdown performance against the Temple Owls, establishing himself as the lead running back for the Oklahoma Sooners. When the pressure was on, he came through. No hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching this season, his performance wasn't a fluke. Tory Blaylock is on a streak. And just like Tory Blaylock delivered for Oklahoma, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday. You order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply, promo period through 11/18. And the Oklahoma Sooners go into this game against the Auburn Tigers as a near touchdown favorite. But also the NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Love looking at FanDuel because it's easy to see the player projections, the over-unders, and you can build a same game parlay or even jump in live as the action unfolds. It makes games more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Once again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So also notable on the injury report, we're looking at it right now, and we're seeing Zion Kearney, wide receiver number 7, is a guy that I think Jay and I both expected to be in the wide receiver rotation, especially if Keontez Lewis is out, because he's somebody that can play in the slot, he can play on the outside, and he's a dynamic player for you. Also notable here is that Giovanni Gibson and Eli Bowen both listed as doubtful. Now, they could be upgraded as the week goes along, but don't necessarily anticipate Eli Bowen playing. I have kind of been of the mind that Giovanni Gibson could play this week. I thought that it was actually a pretty good chance that he could play this week, given that he's warmed up with the team each of the last 2 weeks. We'll see what his availability looks like as the week goes along. But if Keontez Lewis is able to go, then maybe you don't need Giovanni Gibson this week, and you can continue to build him up, get him more confident running on his legs, and get him ready for Kent State as kind of his tune-up ahead of the Red River Showdown. So no Giovanni Gibson, no Eli Bowen. Not a surprise for Eli Bowen. Haven't really seen much from him in the warm-up part of Oklahoma's preparation, but you got to imagine at some point he'll be available. But as we discussed in the first segment, Oklahoma's cornerback room is otherwise getting healthy at a good time. You had Jacoby Johnson and Kendall Dolby come back last week against Temple. Gentry Williams sat out last week, but it sounds like he's going to be available for this week against the Auburn Tigers. So even if you don't have Eli Bowen, you still have got your starters in Cortland Guillory and Gentry Williams, and then their top backups in Kendall Dolby and Jacoby Johnson available for you. So again, things trending up for Oklahoma's cornerback room at the right time with a big-time matchup against Cam Coleman, Malcolm Simmons, and Eric Singleton at wide receiver. Listed as out already for this game, Troy Everett, we know, tore his ACL, and that's what makes the Jake Michael appearance on the availability report a little bit concerning, because if he's not able to go, that center position is going to be a big question mark going into this game against what's going to be a good Auburn defensive front. Also out, Jacob Sexton, offensive tackle, Jake Taylor, an offensive lineman for Oklahoma. Sexton has been in and out of the lineup since the start of the season. He got banged up, I think, at the end of the... No, maybe he didn't get banged up, but he went in for a banged up Michael Fasusi at the end of the Michigan game. Also, Jake Taylor is not going to be available this week. Just 2 guys, part of that 2022 recruiting class, that just haven't been able to stay healthy and stay on the field. And it's an unfortunate part of football where injuries happen, but it's also an unfortunate part for these guys who have never really been able to have consistently good health. So, thoughts going out to those guys that hopefully they can get available soon and be a part of this offensive line rotation. Also out, Jeremiah Newcomb. He was listed as the 3rd-team Cheetah for this week against Auburn, behind Kendall Daniels or Reggie Powers. And then comes Jeremiah Newcomb. They've transitioned him from what everybody expected he'd play corner to play Cheetah this year. And he looks the part. He's got the physique for it. He's definitely got the speed, the athleticism. He's got the coverage ability to be a dynamic player out of the slot, playing that Cheetah role in Brent Venables' defense, but he's not going to be available. Isaiah Dent, that's a name to keep an eye on. That's somebody that we really like here on this show. We think is a good player and has the potential to be really good for this team. He's a backup offensive tackle for you. He's questionable on this list. Now, thankfully, Derek Simmons is healthy, and he got through the Temple game without any setbacks, and he looks good to go. You've got a veteran in Luke Buklenko if Michael Fasusi is not able to go, and you still have Logan Howland. So you have options at offensive tackle. Now, you want to have Fasusi and Simmons as your bookend tackles ahead of this week's matchup with Auburn. But if you don't, you still have some veteran options there with Buklenko and Howland that you can deploy at offensive tackle that, for Dent, he's just may not get an opportunity to play. So we talked about Keontez Lewis being listed as probable. Owen Hollenbeck is also listed as probable. He was listed as the backup center on the team's most recent depth chart. So do they feel comfortable going with him at center if Jake Michael gets banged up and has to miss a series, or more, God forbid. But Owen Hollenbeck getting the respect of the coaches, gaining that trust, the center two on this team, at least on the depth chart. Now they could have some options from their interior offensive line guys that they want to try at center and see if they could be better options than a true freshman. But maybe Owen Hollenbeck is just the true freshman to go out there and make a name for himself early on in his career. Also listed as probable was Danny Okoye. This is huge, man, because you need some speed off the edge. You need some athleticism off the edge. Danny Okoye brings that in spades. He's going to get some opportunities to rush the passer. If Oklahoma can get Jackson Arnold into some second and long, third and long situations, that's a great spot for Oklahoma's defense to be in. The key here is winning first down, or at least minimizing the chunk that they get on first down. If you can limit them to under 4 yards per first down carry, that's going to put you in a really good spot to get them off the field early and let your offense go to work. If they're rattling off 6 yards per carry, 5 yards per carry, it's going to be really, really difficult to control the game like you want to control the game. So having a guy like Danny Okoye back with his speed, his athleticism, his ferocity, it just is going to make Oklahoma's defense better. Where he factors into the defensive end rotation, that remains to be seen. We'll have to track that and follow that as he gets potentially some significant run this week against the Auburn Tigers. And that's really it for Oklahoma. For Auburn, Damari Alston is running back, a guy that our guy Zach Blackerby over at Locked On Auburn believes is the most complete running back that Auburn has. So even though they've gotten really good production from their running game, it hasn't always been with a guy like Damari Alston. This has been an efficient rushing attack led by Jackson Arnold, but also getting buoyed by another really good player in Jeremiah Cobb, who's rushed for 6.8 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns, and 314 rushing yards. He's averaging 104.7 rushing yards per game so far in 2025. Auburn's got a nice little 3-headed attack at running back or in the run game with Arnold, with Alston, and with Jeremiah Cobb. So it's going to be key for Oklahoma to slow those guys down and get Jackson Arnold into some second and longs, third and longs. So Alston's going to play. Malcolm Simmons, the wide receiver, we already told you is going to play. And then Champ Anthony, that's an important name to watch at cornerback for Auburn. They've had a really, really hard time covering so far this season. Baylor's Sawyer Robertson threw for over 400 yards. They gave up 170 passing yards and 2 touchdowns in the air to South Alabama this past weekend. And the idea is, and the expectation is, that Oklahoma is going to be able to take advantage of a young secondary that Auburn's deployed so far through 3 games. We'll see. That remains to be seen, but they're going to have to find some big plays in the passing game to get this offense moving and get them down the field and go get some points. You can't solely rely on your defense to pitch a shutout or hold a team to a field goal. They could do it. They've got the talent, they got the scheme, they got the personality, they've got the energy to go and make life really difficult for Jackson Arnold and allow Oklahoma's offense to have the ball and hold the ball and go grind out what would be a big win in SEC play to move them to 1-0. Eric Singleton, the top transfer wide receiver in the portal this past offseason, looks like he's going to be questionable going into the game, but Auburn people expect him to play. So that's not one of those I would get too concerned with following until he shows up as doubtful on one of these availability reports. But if he's questionable all week, I imagine that he plays. So that's kind of it. Oh, and then edge rusher Amaris Williams, somebody that Auburn fans think very, very high of. Our guy, Zach Blackerby, also thinks very highly of him as well. And if he's not able to go, I mean, that's a hit to their edge rotation. Jay Crawford, a cornerback, that's depth at cornerback that it sounds like Auburn desperately needs. They need somebody to step up and go make a play in the passing game. We'll see if they're able to show better than what they showed against the Baylor Bears. Yeah, they got a win. They got a decisive win over Baylor. but Sawyer Robertson was able to make a lot work in the passing game in week 1. Oklahoma's going to have to do the same thing, and they're going to have to get that ground game going. You can't just rely on John Mateer to tote the ball or throw the ball a combined 54 times like you did against Michigan. You're going to need to give him some help, either out wide at wide receiver or Torrey Blaylock, Xavier Robinson, Javante Barnes, and maybe even Jay Knott to help him out in the run game as well. And that's going to do it for this bonus edition of Locked On Sooners, just giving you the injury update from the first week of availability reports for Oklahoma versus Auburn. But until next time, or hey, follow the show at Locked On Sooners on all your favorite social media platforms. Subscribe to the show on YouTube or wherever you download and listen to podcasts. And for my buddy Jay at Unfair Sports, you can read my work covering the Oklahoma Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. The show is at Locked On Sooners on all of your favorite social media platforms. But until next time, Boomer Sooner.